On this week's episode of the A to B podcast, I'm joined by Will Sliney. Having graduated in 2005 from the Cork Institute of Technology with a degree in multimedia, Will took a loan out and went over to the San Diego Comic-Con to show off his work, where he was rejected by many before flying back home. Since then, he has become an artist for Marvel and is best known for his work on Spider-Man and the rise of Kylo Ren comic book series. He lives and works from his home in Ballycotton, County Cork. Hi Will, how are you?
Not too bad. Fair play. Most people just read the Wikipedia page, which is rarely updated. So you've been doing your homework.
I have. It takes up the majority of my time to actually research a guest before having the confidence to approach them. But I'm talking to you from Ballycotton, am I?
Yeah, correct. Yeah, I've moved back home to Ballycotton, I guess, about 6 years ago now. Wow, time is starting to fly. After being, abroad for many, many years. So it's nice to be back. Definitely. I love it down here. And I get to keep my head down and get my work done whenever I want to. So it's good for that point of view, definitely.
Of course. It must be a very busy household at the moment. Yourself and Laura had another child recently.
Yeah, we just had our second kid. She is just coming up on 6 weeks old. Actually, I keep forgetting her. She's 6 weeks old. She's our second baby. So it's funny that 6 weeks with our first one felt like 5 years, whereas this 6 weeks has gone much smoother. We know what we're doing now this time, which is nice. So I keep getting surprised that it's actually 6 weeks now at this stage. So
that's lovely. Congratulations, Will. But you also have a son, Tig?
Yeah, Tig, who has starred in his own RTE show already in the Homeschool Hub. He was one of the characters just based off of him. Yeah, and he was probably one of the youngest people to make a Marvel cameo as well. He's hidden in the background in one of the comics.
That's kind of cool because it just so happens that Tig isn't the only Corkonian with connections to the Marvel Comics universe. Spider-Man 2099 also has some connections to Cork.
He does. So he was created in the 90s by Peter David and Rick Leonardi, and he's half Mexican and half Irish. And that's as far as they went into his background in terms of where specifically he's from. So when they put me onto the title, considering the fact that we had Peter involved in it as well, who's the original creator, I was like, do you mind if we make him from Cork? And he was like, yeah, why not? So there
that's
you go.
So cool. Is there a specific region that he's from in Cork?
Canonically no, but in my head, it's his father's from Cork. He's from Nueva York, which is New York of the future. His mom is Mexican, and just Cork. I mean, if it's up to me, of course, I'm going to pick Ballycotton, but I think that might be pushing it a little bit too far now.
Fair enough. Well, I could absolutely sit here for the next 6 hours and just talk to you about Spider-Man, but I'm going to try and keep some bit of structure to the episode. Sure. So I'm going to bring you back to your time in CIT, where you studied multimedia. What year did you go to college?
I was in college from, I think it was 2001 to 2005, or maybe it was 2000 to 2004, something like that. It was the second every year of multimedia. Feels like a long time ago now, when in many ways it also feels like it wasn't, I guess. So it was a very experimental course when I was inside there. But some of the friends that I made from that course are still some of my best friends now. So I have some extremely fond memories of that course, and I'm very thankful that I did it.
And what led you to doing multimedia? Were you artistic as a child? Were you interested in comic books?
I'm so sorry, man.
No worries at all.
I just had an interruption. Daddy's doing a podcast, which I don't think he understands.
Take your time.
Hold on there. It'll be difficult. I'm sorry. Come here, you. Where's my tummy? Sorry.
No,
sorry. Door's locked now.
It's a bit like when the toddler comes into the journalist's office on Sky News.
Yeah, I know. That's happened a million times now that everyone works from home. So will I just keep going where I was?
Of course. I was just asking you if you were artistic as a child and what led you to picking multimedia as a course.
Yes. Yeah, I kind of was. I always loved art, and I guess I was confident in my art abilities, but I never really knew there was a job out there where I could actually do it for a career. So I never really had it on my radar. I always thought I was going to do engineering. And I used to be like I used to sit down, I used to be designing Formula One cars, but little did I realize that I was probably more interested in like designing the liveries on the Formula One cars rather than the aerodynamics of them. So like engineering was what I was going to be doing, but I went to a career guidance counselor just before I was filling out my CV. And she, in fairness to her, like I did a multiple choice question for her, and she was like, every single question you've done here, like, is firing that you have to do something a bit more creative. If I don't do it, I'll go mad. So that kind of changed the course of my life, really. Switched over to multimedia, which was a brand new course, which had like a broad range of stuff to be studying or doing, which interested me because I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do, because I didn't know that the job of comic book artist existed at that stage. While I still would have been drawing superheroes and drawing comic book pages and stuff like that, I just didn't know you could actually do it viably as a career. So multimedia kind of felt like a some way towards that, test out all the different creative stuff that's in there, whether it's filmmaking, whether it was, website making, photography, stuff like that. And, I guess I ended up here at the end of the day. So, yeah.
Wow. And Will, were you like a member of any clubs or societies during your time in CIT?
No, and I really regret not doing any of that because I didn't really understand it. I don't know why. It's funny, like, and I didn't even embrace my nerd side, shall we say, until a little bit later. Like even like I'm playing. Let's say I'm playing Dungeons and Dragons now as it's
Nice.
become popular because of Stranger Things. I wish I was playing it back then. I just didn't. I didn't even know about it. I didn't even like I just didn't embrace that side of college enough. I kind of stuck with my friends in class and my friends that I moved in with. It's definitely one little regret that I have was not kind of joining the societies that were there for sure.
Especially in CIT. Now, I might be biased in saying it as a student of CIT, but I think the societies that are run are just excellent, and there's an amazing sense of community in all of them. But Will, you graduated in 2005. What was your plan? Were you Did you work for a bit with any companies in graphic design or anything like that, or did you go straight gunning for the comic book industry?
So I had a job from my work experience working for an e-learning company doing 3D graphics for them. So that was quite handy and it was a good job and I really, really enjoyed it there. It was a startup company,
Nice.
so it was a good environment. I was working with some good people and we were doing some interesting stuff and I got to really learn a lot of like 3D like 3D art design, that kind of stuff as well. So that was good. But at the same time, I started understanding more and more about this comic book world. Yeah. And like you said, so when I finished college, I put together a 5-page portfolio and I took out a loan and I flew over to San Diego. And yeah, as the story goes, I was like fully convinced I was going to be walking into my comic book job, that my drawings were good enough, only to very, very quickly realize that I had a long way to go. But that's all part of the process, and
Of course.
that was part of my learning journey. And I did that then for a good few years, where I'd save up enough money, get over to a convention, try and get my work in front of both editors and in front of other artists as well, to get their opinions on what my drawings were like and what kind of stuff I could improve on and stuff. And that began the slow process of getting better at art and getting good enough to be able to work in the industry.
How did you deal with the rejection, Will? Because when you went to San Diego Comic Con, you were told that basically your work wasn't good enough. How come you didn't throw in the towel there and then?
Yeah, you learn pretty fast. You need a thick neck. You really do, and it's all part of being an artist. And like, I guess I would have been posting my stuff online and stuff as well, and I was like getting more and more. Like back then, it was forums where like you'd post your work and stuff, and people would be reviewing it. And anytime you start putting your stuff out there, you start to learn that people, some people will like it and some people won't like it, and you get a bit of that there. And look, of course, it was disheartening. But at the same time, like I was getting really fantastic feedback from these people who, I had only been reading their stuff and like, idolizing, shall we say, a lot of these comic book artists and their work and stuff. And next thing you meet them in real life and they give you encouraging advice when they look at your portfolio and the stuff that you've drawn. So it gets you quite excited. And I remember getting on that plane, like flying back home, and I was like, okay, I'm going to do whatever I can to be good enough to be, hired in this industry next year, and I go back and I draw some more artwork, and I'd find that I'm not good enough again, but I definitely would see the improvement in my own work. And it just, it was a long process, but each time I was getting closer and closer. I was getting hired for some small jobs. I was getting so hired like for independent companies, and I always felt like I was climbing a ladder. Once I got on the first step, I was more visible to more companies. The bit higher the company, the bigger the company, the higher up in the ladder I was climbing, and the more people would see my stuff. And I was starting, like, I would slowly then start getting on the radar of the bigger companies. And I had a good few years of kind of flirting close with them then for a while.
And did you stay with the startup for much longer when you did come home?
I worked for them for 2 years, I think it was, I guess 2006 and 2007. And then by that stage, I'd done some independent comic books for like small comic book publishers here in Ireland. And I landed like a year-long job with a UK publisher called Classical Comics, where I had the very exciting job of drawing Richard III as a comic book. So, so it was an experience, but what it was full-time paid comic book work for a year. So I actually had a bit of a travel bug in me as well. So what I did was I moved over to Toronto. I got a visa to work in Toronto, even though I wasn't going to be working there. I was going to be drawing the comics from there, which is, perfectly fine. So I got my visa to be self-employed over there. And I spent the year drawing comics. I'd go down to New York as much as I could. And by the end of that year, I kind of started breaking into the American scene. A company called Boom Studios hired me. And like I was saying about that ladder, like they were the next rung on the ladder up. And I worked for them for quite a while and just continued on from there.
Your work really began to pick up a lot of traction when you were with Boom. When about did the comic book series, or I suppose the graphic novel, Cuchulainn come about?
Yeah, so I worked for Boom for 2 or 3 years, and like I had started getting a lot of stuff coming out in America. Like I was going over to conventions, doing signings and events over there for the launch of these books. I was actually working on a book called Farscape, which used to be a TV show, and we continued on the TV show. It was a Jim Henson TV show. We continued on like its fifth season as a comic book. So I would go around America to all these big events, for like signings for different issues, for comic conventions and stuff like that. And I felt like it would be really nice to get something out in Ireland, because no one in Ireland kind of understood what I did. No one in Ireland really understood what comics was at that stage, really, to be honest with you. It just wasn't on like the public radar that there were people from Ireland starting to break in. And fair enough, because, I was only starting to break in there. So that was kind of the motivations to do Cullen, was one, that, and second, because, I like most Irish people, I love that story, and I wanted to give my own kind of a slant on it and do it as a superhero comic book. So that's what I did, and it led to like a nice little kind of it got an awful lot of press here, which was great. Like it was like full page 3 of the Irish Independent, which was huge. Like there was a lot of different kind of things like that, which were really kind of which were really huge exposure for me here. And that's what started getting me on TV and stuff in Ireland, which kind of opened up a lot of that world to me, and a lot of Ireland to kind of comic books, I think, as well. And it was right at the tail end of when I was working for Boom, and just before I started working for Marvel. So then all of a sudden, like I was doing all these big high profile books, so it all timed quite nicely.
When was it that Marvel actually noticed you? Was it at Dublin Comic Con or anything like that?
No, at Dice it was called. Dice would have been like the big comic book convention back then. It was before Dublin Comic Con was around, which was run by a comic book store called The Big Bang. And it would have been much more Dublin Comic Con. It's great, but it's Dublin Comic Con would be more about, actors and like photos with like actors, and like they have their artist alley and stuff like that as well. But Dice was like a proper kind of real hardcore comic book show, where like all the guests were just like the big comic book artists and comic book writers, and they would have the big thing they had was editors from the big companies that would come over and do portfolio reviews. So people would literally travel from all over Europe to get these meetings with these comic book editors. And yeah, exactly. It was at that show where CB Cebulski gave me my job, which was quite life changing. that moment.
Of course, that's a life-changing job opportunity for anyone. How long did it take for you to be noticed before you were actually brought over to the offices and signed up?
So I wouldn't have had to have been there physically, but New York Comic Con happened to be on 2 weeks after that show anyway, and I was going to it. So it was like that. Yeah, it was. I was before I knew it, I was over sitting in a. I'll never forget it. Actually, sitting in a cafe with the editor and the writer of the book, talking about what the story is, when it's going to be announced, all this stuff. So it was pretty amazing, and I remember just walking around New York in a total daze that like I finally, after many years of trying, pretty much after a decade of wanting to draw comics for Marvel, I'd finally gotten the call up to them, and I've gotten to draw so many books for them ever since, which was amazing.
That's a dream come true, isn't it?
Yeah, it really was, and it's been great ever since then to see more and more Irish people kind of break into Marvel. Like they really are taking notice of that one, that you can do the stuff over here, and people in Ireland are realizing that you can do that stuff from here. Like, so keep seeing new artists on the rise here, which is exciting.
Can you name a few for me?
Well, there's been a bunch that have started working for Marvel ever since. So, like Chris O'Halloran is someone who actually did multimedia after me. Like he's coloring a lot of books for Marvel, as is Trina Farrell. Another Stephen Byrne and Keen Tormey would have been two that broke into DC in the last couple of years. Keen this year, Stephen a couple of years beforehand. Like, so it keeps on going. And of course, before that, there would have been myself, Declan Shalvey, Stephen Mooney, Nick Roach, PJ Holden, like a bunch of comic book artists that now have all had got their foot in the door of those bigger companies.
Why do you think the Irish are starting to break
Hmm.
into the industry a lot now?
There's definitely an element of even though like we're artists, shall we say, we're still extremely professional here in the way that we do our work, and there's none of this I don't feel like drawing today kind of thing. Like we're well known for hitting our deadlines and being reliable to work for and easy to work for as well. So that definitely helps. And to jump from Ireland to company in America to do this kind of stuff, like I guess you do have to put in that extra bit of hard work. So to get there, like they know once you're there that you'll work hard at it.
Did you ever work for Marvel and live in New York at the same time?
No, actually, no. I was brought over for when I signed I signed an exclusive contract with them, which meaning that I couldn't draw for any other company. I was brought over for a workshop with some like really high profile artists from like the generation previous to give us some kind of lessons in storytelling and just a kind of a general kind of a 4 day chatting about comics work and stuff like that. So that was the only ever time I was over there in like the offices with them. But no, it's all been done from home in Cork.
That's amazing. What kind of equipment do you use?
I use basically a tablet with a screen called a Cintiq, which would have been very rare when I was starting out. But now that technology is in your iPad and your phones and everything, just where you're drawing onto the screen. As simple as that, hooked up to a computer, little simple, easy setup. It's gotten a little bit more complicated now in the last few months ago with all of the TV and video stuff and Twitch streaming. Of course, like I have a lot more kind of tech equipment just surrounding me. But up to then, it was just my computer and my graphics tablet.
That's so cool. What are the deadlines like when it comes to doing art for Marvel? What's that process like?
Yeah, the process is typically a book comes out every 4 weeks, a comic book, which is your standard 20-page comic book that you'll see on the stalls in your comic book stores or wherever they may be sold. So 20 pages every 4 weeks. So that works out as a page a day, really, if it was 5 days a week. We normally work more than that, to be honest with you. And yeah, exactly. We just email the work over. So like each book inside Marvel is part of a different office. So there's like the Spider-Man office, the Avengers office, the Star Wars office.
That
So
sounds
most
so
recently
cool.
I've been in they're all pretty cool rooms as well. It's always nice. Although they've actually recently moved into a new office, which I haven't seen only in the last 6 months or so, which obviously there's nobody in there at the moment, but you know what I mean? Um, yeah, so I've moved from the Spidey office, which I was in all of my career at Marvel, like I guess the first 6 years, into the Star Wars office for the last two, up to and including the rise of Kylo Ren. And yeah, my I send the pages off into my editor whenever they're finished. So I get the script, draw it, send it back in, and that's it. It's nice and simple like that.
Have you ever gotten to write anything for Marvel?
No, I've never written anything for Marvel. I wrote that Cullen book, and I do write some stuff outside of Marvel, but no, there's enough incredibly talented writers inside Marvel that I haven't exactly moved into that space.
Who's your favorite writer to work alongside?
I was actually just asked this today on Twitch as well. I've been very fortunate to work with some incredible writers, and I have really, like, it sounds like I'm cheaping out, but I really haven't, like, I've really enjoyed the process with all of them, and they've all been different. Like with Spider-Man, I got to work with Peter David, who's a
Whoa.
real legend of the industry. He's been around for, he's been doing it for a long time, and he's been like one of the top artists or top writers for Marvel for decades. So it was pretty amazing to get to work on a book with him, and I got to do it for over like 60 issues, and I got to know him and his family a lot. And quite often when I was brought to conventions, I would end up being sitting beside Peter, who's, he's an industry legend. So I was quite honored, and just, it was amazing to work with him. And right up to, like, I've had some great writers in between, and most recently with Kylo Ren, I've been working with Charles Soule, who I've known from long before I broke into the industry. So it's nice to kind of get to circle back and to work with Charles, who's on such a high profile book like The Rise of Kylo Ren.
And the Rise of Kylo Ren series is finished now, isn't it?
Yes, so it's just come out in graphic novel format there in the last couple of weeks, I think it was.
Are you doing any projects now?
Yeah, I'm working on a few different things right now. It's interesting. It's interesting times with everything that's been going on with COVID, of course. What I was working on after it is currently paused, so I've shifted over to something else. Nothing of which has been announced yet, unfortunately. But really, really exciting stuff. So I can't wait for the news to come out.
I'm actually really excited too because I'm not reading anything right now.
Mm.
I've got a couple of comics in my bedside locker here that I haven't really gotten the chance to go through. I really want to start reading Batman comics because I spent like 4 years
Okay.
nonstop reading Spider-Man comics.
Oh, yeah.
And I just kind of I got burnt out.
Okay.
I've read the good, I've read the bad.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people online had, I wouldn't even say mixed opinions, but a lot of people just straight up hate. I believe it's One More Day and I think it's One More Day and One Last Day, something
Okay.
like that. Like those two comics people hate, but like I read them and I liked them.
I mean, if you're looking to the internet to see what people think about comics, you're going to find somebody that doesn't like every comic out there. So I wouldn't really worry about it.
I think you're right there. Well,
Yeah.
I think that kind of that
Mm.
translates to all sorts of media and just work in general. It's a very, I suppose, perspective. It's a very subjective thing. Um, what would you say your favorite Spider-Man run is?
My favorite Spider-Man would be Ultimate Spider-Man. It was a reinvention of Spider-Man that came out when I guess I would have been Peter Parker's age as well. So I was really related to it, I guess. And yeah, it was the book that really made me want to take drawing comics seriously and try and get it as a career. So I owe a lot to it, I suppose.
Now, well, you've always worked from home long before COVID was a thing.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
How are you finding that work-life balance right now?
Yeah, no, it's good. Like, obviously, I work from home, but then so does everyone at the moment, So that's just the way that it goes. No, it's been great. Like, there's obviously Tig now is 2, so like it's like trying to explain to him that Dad's at work when he's just inside in this room that he broke into earlier on in this podcast already. So that side of it is, that's I guess the biggest challenge of it. But it's lovely to be here with them and to be able to help out whenever, if my wife needs a hand while she's at home on maternity, instead of me being, an hour or so away in some office or whatever, I get to be around to be able to help out during the day. And we got to have a little walk earlier in the nice weather and stuff, which was nice. And yeah, that's definitely handy.
Can you tell me about We Will Draw?
Yeah, well, yeah, I didn't have anything like that to be honest with you when it started, and that's kind of where like the online stuff kind of came out of. Basically, I just basically did this kind of an online drawing challenge, which really kind of took off because it was the day that people were sent home, and before I knew it, the next day I had 1,000 drawings of Spider-Man sent my way, and the day afterwards I had 2,000 Star Wars drawings done, and it really took off, and from there RTE kind of swooped in and they brought me to be part of the homeschool hub, which was lovely. So I was teaching art on TV and RTE. And so it just kind of opened up a total new door for me. And it's something that I quite enjoy. So we did a couple of YouTube streams. I've since switched it over to Twitch just because Twitch seems to be a bit more enjoyable for streaming, although I'm sure YouTube will catch up with that as well. So now what I kind of do with that is I just kind of stream some evenings, just if there's some projects that I'm working on, and it's become nice. There's a lovely kind of art community building around it, and it's something that consistently grows too. Like I keep seeing new artists coming in every time that we stream, which is lovely. So like, and they're all sharing artworks that they're drawing and stuff like that. So it's been nice, and it's nice to have obviously when everyone's stuck at home, it almost feels like a mini little art studio that's online with streaming. So it's been a new kind of encounter, or new encounter is the wrong word, but a new kind of a new type of even industry for me to go into, but it's very much enjoyable.
Nice. What kind of projects do you stream on Twitch?
Yeah, it depends. So that's what I'm trying to do. Is I'm trying to reorder my work projects to be able to do stuff on Twitch. So I obviously can't draw a Star Wars comic on Twitch live. Like everything has to go through such a round of approvals. But there are different projects that I can show on there. So it's almost like I'm doing two things at once. While I'm sitting at home doing my regular work, I can be broadcasting as well at the same time on Twitch.
That's awesome. If anybody has an interest in art or would like to see Will's work on Twitch, you can check out his channel, which is twitch.tv/Will Sliney. Now, Will, are you ready to go on to the rapid questions round?
Let's do it.
I'm going to be selfish. I'm going to ask you a question. Tobey Maguire, Andrew Garfield, or Tom Holland?
Overall, Tom Holland.
How would you describe your comic book art style?
Um, um, wow, it's very hard to describe your own style. There's definitely uh, trying to find a nice mixture between cartooning and realism, I guess. So trying to make it more and more dynamic as I learn more and more each time. So evolving, let's call it evolving.
What are you reading at the moment?
What's the most recent thing I read? Firepower by Chris Samney and Robert Kirkman is a brand new storyline which I'm really enjoying. That would be the one that pops out to mind, definitely.
What's been your most difficult project to date?
Like 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 when you're drawing all of the time, when like you're sitting there and you're doing this stuff all of the time, you don't really think like that. You're like, okay, I have to do this. So like I worked on Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, which was the comic book of the now real theme park that you can set foot on, which were, when I was drawing it, it was before it existed. I would have been working off all of the concept art from Walt Disney Imagineers and from Lucasfilm and all that kind of stuff, which was an amazing process, yet very, very difficult, combined with the fact that I was in a very, very strange situation, knowing that this place that doesn't exist that I'm drawing in this comic book will very soon one day exist, and people will be walking around this real place holding up my comic, comparing what I'm drawing to the like to what the actual place looked like. And that's exactly what happened. Like the first, I was brought over for the opening and I saw people walking around literally holding up the comic book, comparing it to my drawing. So there was a lot of pressure there and an awful lot of stuff to draw, because of the, like with Star Wars, there's always a ton of stuff that you have to draw with tons and tons of details, but you need to get them right because you're paying respect to all of the artists that have worked in Star Wars, So let's put that down as the most difficult, but it was an incredible experience.
In-game or Infinity War?
Ooh, both do two very, very different things as movies. Like if I would enjoy the experience of watching Infinity War more because it's non-stop, but Endgame does something that no other movie has ever done, in that like it wraps up a, what is it, like 22 movie saga, while paying tribute to many of the movies that went before it, in a very, very clever way. So they both win points for different reasons.
What Marvel character have you not gotten to work on, but that you'd love to?
Wolverine, actually. I was actually very close to, even last week, they were talking about me drawing a thing for Wolverine, and the character got switched out to Spider-Man. And I got very, very excited at the thought of getting to do Wolvie. So we'll put him there.
What would you say you owe your success to?
I've never really thought about it like that. Definitely hard work and never giving up. I chased it as much as I could. I went all the ways around the world, like putting together every penny that I had, for many, many years, chasing this job. And I never stopped. I guess I was relentless in doing that. Like, I would come home, I would get rejected, I'd come back and I'd sit down and I'd work, and I would be drawing like for every waking hour of the day for many, 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 many years to get here. So, and that still has to keep going on. Even now, even though I've been working for Marvel for years, I still have to keep putting in the hard work. I still have to keep improving because everyone else is improving, and still have to keep pushing the career as much forward as I possibly can.
Have you watched the Japanese TV series where he has his own Transformer called the Leopardon?
I have actually drawn that in a Marvel comic, believe it or not.
No way, that's so cool.
Yeah.
What games are you playing at the moment?
Right now, I am playing a lot of Call of Duty Warzone, Ghost of Tsushima, Fall Guys, and I'm super excited to play some more Avengers now when I can get that unlocked and get going into it.
Will you be getting a PlayStation 5 at launch?
I more than likely will. Definitely looking forward to Miles Morales.
Thank you so much, Will, for coming on to today's episode of the A to B podcast.
No worries. Those were the easiest quickfire questions. I thought you were going to really be challenging me. So they were definitely a little tamer than I was expecting. So
they're not supposed to be challenging. It's more of a quick rapid round series of questions, just for a bit of crack.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming on to today's episode, Will.
No worries at all. Thanks for having me.